Hello everyone, in this week's video, I'm going to draw whatever the heck I want. This is a series on my channel where I draw whatever I feel like drawing. It's a fun series because I don't have to stick with a certain theme for the video, and I can kind of just do whatever I feel like doing. And I ended up making a lot of art this time around, so let's not waste any time and jump into it. The first drawing is one I did at the end of kind of a long work day. It was a Wednesday, so that means I was finishing up editing on a video, putting on the finishing touches, exporting it, uploading it, all that jazz. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it in a video, but I get my videos done on Wednesdays. This is mostly because if a video is sponsored, I need to send it in for review, and companies usually want the video a few days in advance so that there is time to give me feedback and I have time to make changes if they are needed. So I make it my goal to get videos done on Wednesdays. I keep this schedule even when videos aren't sponsored, like this one. Just help me stay on track and make life easier for my future self. This was also a long day because when I filmed this, I was having a hard time sleeping for some reason. I had multiple nights where I wasn't able to fall asleep. One of the days I slept for like 3 hours. And so I wasn't feeling very good, definitely not like my usual self. So this piece was kind of an expression of my tiredness. I also just wanted to draw something chill and simple. I kept things very sketchy and loose. Instead of doing a rough sketch and a cleanup sketch, I kind of just cleaned up my sketch as I drew. Even though it's a chill, simple piece, I really like how it turned out. I like the sketchiness and expression of the character. It just feels kind of different from my usual. I also had a ton of fun going over the sketch with the blending tool to give things a kind of more painty feel. This is something I used to do a good amount when I would sketch like a few years back, but I haven't done it recently. Probably because I don't just sketch pictures super often, or at least not as often as I used to. It was a little funny because as I was working on this picture, I kept getting a sense of deja vu, like I had drawn something kind of similar to this before. And so I started scrolling on my Instagram, and the subject of the drawing is kind of different, but it does have similar colors. It's kind of interesting to compare the two and their differences, because they're both kind of just quick sketches, but you can tell my technique has changed a good amount. So yeah, this was day one of working on this video. Just kind of a simple sketch, but I do like it. The next day, I had thankfully gotten a better night's sleep and had started to do some prep work for a vacation trip that my husband and I will be going on. I want to bring some drawing supplies with me, so I packed this art case with supplies. I was worried I wouldn't be able to get my usual sketchbook supplies to all fit in this case, but thankfully they did, and there's even a bit of extra room, so yay! Because I had now just nicely organized all my art supplies, I now really wanted to use them, so I broke out my sketchbook. In my sketchbook, I have swatches of the markers that I packed and put in the case. Since I can't bring all 300 colors with me, I kind of just picked the essentials. I wasn't sure what I wanted to draw, so I decided to randomly pick 3 colors to inspire me. Sometimes I find getting ideas can be easier if I try to limit things a bit, compared to having a ton of options. To pick the colors, I closed my eyes and randomly pointed at colors. To mix things up a bit, I turned the sketchbook around with my eyes closed, and then randomly pointed. So these are the colors I got. Now let's see what I do with them. When I saw these colors, the first thing I thought of was snow cones and those red, white, and blue popsicles. So I did some little doodles of these to help me warm up and get inspired. Now, these don't feature the light pink very much, but the pink is kind of just going to be used as an accent. So frozen treats like these ones make me think of hot summer days. So I'm going to draw a character that is experiencing a hot summer day. And I know it's not July yet, but in my head, this character is celebrating the 4th of July. I'm sorry, I'm American. I can't see red, white, and blue without thinking Merica. But when sketching out the head, I also sketched a box. I saw a person on Twitter talking about how this helped them with head perspective, so I thought I would give it a try. Especially since I plan to draw this character with a baseball cap, and I want the cap to also be in the same perspective. I included the cap to make things feel more like a hot, sunny summer day, but also just to add some interest. Plus, I know I need to practice drawing hats more often. The character will have some hair bits in the front, and the rest is going to be pulled back into a ponytail that comes out through a hole in the back of the cap. For the expression, I wanted this character to look very done with the heat, like she is tired, hot, and just wants to cool off. In a bit, I'll also add a hand that's kind of fanning her face. Also, just in case you're curious, the pencil case I am using is from Arteza, and you can actually still get it on their website. I got it a handful of years ago when I did a video with them, and I've always thought it was neat, but I've never had too much of a use for it. I even considered getting rid of it recently when I was preparing to move. However, I'm very glad I didn't, since it's great for when I travel. Plus, now that I know all of my essential sketchbook supplies fit in it, I think I'm just going to keep them in there. I usually have a tote bag that I lug around the house with me when I want to use my sketchbook in a different part of the house. But this thing is way more convenient than the tote bag. As you can see, I'm now adding the line art. I'm using Magic Fly fine liners. A lot of times I use my Ohuhu fine liners, but these ones had a thinner barrel, so they fit better in the pencil case. They work basically the same as my Ohuhu ones, so it doesn't really matter. Plus, I kind of lost a decent number of my Ohuhu ones, so it was nice having all of the colors I wanted for the Magic Fly ones. To add some shading or to add a bit of warmth to the edges of shadows, I used the light pink. For the next drawing, I'm drawing the same character eating a snow cone, so she is much happier now. Because the red and blue are kind of powerful colors, I actually ended up not using the markers too much, which struck me a little bit funny since the whole point was kind of to use the markers. But they did their job of inspiring me, and I do use them a bit. I always have to remind myself that just because I'm using a marker sketchbook does not mean I need to make everything in my sketchbook be a full marker drawing. I'm still allowed to use other supplies and to be sketchier, but like my brain always wants to be like, I'm using a marker sketchbook. I need to make everything full color and really pretty and use all the markers, but like I don't need to do that. I do apologize that I do have to kind of speed through some of the drawings. Like I said at the start, I ended up making a decent amount of art for this video, so I have a lot of footage that we need to get through. I always have so much fun with these videos that I often end up over-recording. Oh, also for the line work, to make it interesting and to have there be both red and blue, I tried to use the red wherever the light would be hitting, and I would use the blue for more where it'd be shadowy spots. I kind of got lazy and didn't do it too much for this sketch, but I did it a good amount on the last one. On the next page of this spread, I want to have there be just one larger drawing. Since in my head this character is celebrating the 4th of July, I thought I would draw her watching fireworks. I'm going to have her be turned in side view, and for fun, I'll add firework doodles all around her with marker later. Something that I didn't notice until I was editing is that you can see the reference I'm looking at on my phone. I didn't need a reference for front and 3/4 view, but for side view I just couldn't quite envision the shape, so I looked up an image on Google, and it was really helpful. In a moment, I'll change the character's mouth to be open to help her feel more excited about the fireworks. When I draw mouths in side view, I do the more stylized anime way of doing it where the mouth is kind of on the side of the head. And to be honest, I've been wanting to change how I draw mouths in side view for a while now. I want to make it so it's actually like in profile view instead of on the side of the head. But doing that is something I just haven't gotten around to tackling yet, because in order for me to change this, I need to study mouth shapes in side view when the mouth is actually how it's supposed to be. And that always sounds not super fun, I guess. But it's something I should really do one of these days, because it is something I want to change about my style. For this one, we're going to kind of skip through the line work. It's not that interesting. I'm just redrawing over what you watched me draw already, and I don't feel like there's a huge difference. So boom, now the line work is done. My favorite part was definitely adding the fireworks. I just draw a bunch of lines shooting out in a kind of circular motion. To help them feel more like fireworks, I broke the lines up and made some of the lines have dots at the ends. I tried to add a pretty even balance of red ones and blue ones. It was getting a bit tricky trying to randomly place them, but also place them randomly in a nice way. It always feels kind of conflicting. So here's my sketchbook spread inspired by the random colors I pulled. I'm happy I went with the idea of using random colors. I find doing things like this often helps me think of new ideas or concepts. The next thing I'm working on is my personal piece for June, and yes, I know, I am breaking my rule again of not using these personal pieces for videos, but since I am going on a vacation this month, I feel like I wouldn't be able to get the personal piece done on top of my usual weekly videos, so I'm breaking that rule again and using the footage in a video. But because of the vacation I am going to be taking, this kind of theme of summer vacation was in my head, along with ice cubes. I saw this brush that makes realistic ice cubes, and it made me really want to try drawing ice cubes for myself. So I started playing around with ideas, and I liked this one of a girl sitting at a table with her drink. I liked the pose of her head resting on her hand. In my head, she's at a resort, so I'm going to include a pool and people in the background to kind of help get this point across. Now that I have a concept, we can work on the cleanup sketch. This time around, I'm going to spend a bit more time showing you the cleanup process, and then we'll speed through the line art. I feel like I do it the other way around a lot of times, so I thought this might be a nice change of pace. In my initial sketch, I had the girl looking forward, kind of like she's talking to someone across the table. But I decided to move her gaze down more towards the drink so that the viewer will want to look in that direction as well. I wanted to call a bit more attention to the drink since it's kind of the inspiration for this picture. Also, I really like the expression that this character has and the way her cheek is being pushed up. I think it turned out cute. In my head, she's trying to have a nice summer vacation, but maybe it's just not going to plan, so she is venting a bit to a friend across the table. It was interesting working on this illustration because I kind of just jumped into it without much of a plan. Like, I didn't grab any references or inspiration. I didn't make any references for myself. I kind of just started drawing, which I don't often do for my finished illustrations. I like to plan and have references so that the process goes as smoothly as possible, but it was kind of fun just figuring things out as I went. I think I was feeling a bit more chill about the process because this art was just for a drawing what I want video. I told myself I didn't even have to finish the picture in time for the video. My plan was if I didn't finish it in time, I would just show you all that I did finish. But thankfully I did finish in time, so you do get to see the whole process and the finished piece. But not having the time limit that I usually have for making art helped me be more relaxed with the creation process. I felt like I had more time to play around and experiment if needed. Kind of like how I was having some slight issues with this hand that will be grabbing the straw of the drink. But thankfully after a few tries it came together. I just kept drawing the perspective wrong for the pointer finger. I kept trying to look at my own hand while doing this, but it was not easy. Oh, I also really like how the hairstyle turned out for this one. I went with a low side ponytail. I really like how the little wispy hairs by her ears look. I also like the detail of the ponytail coming around and resting on her shoulder. After getting the character sketched out, it was time to move on to the more intimidating part, the background. And to help me out, I'm going to be using 3D models in Clip Studio Paint. I am mostly going to be using the primitive models. These models are just basic shapes like cubes and cylinders, but they can still be really helpful for getting an idea for where I want things. For the background people, I use the character models, and after some time, this is how the background was laid out. I sketched over the 3D models, and now we have this. And next was the line art process and getting the base colors in place. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to speed through this part a bit more, so I am using the Clip Studio Paint captured footage. It doesn't move around like my screen captured footage, so I can speed it up really fast without making you all dizzy. Also, random question for all of you, just because I'm curious. How many of you watch the screen when you play my videos? I get a lot of comments from people that say they listen to my videos while drawing, and this is totally fine. I also do this with art YouTubers that I watch. I'll turn the videos on my phone so that I can listen to their videos as I'm working, but if I want to see what they're doing, I'm able to glance over at the screen. So I'm just curious as to what all of you do. Do you only listen? Do you listen and occasionally look at the screen? Or do you fully watch the video? I'm kind of mostly asking this question so I know how much effort I should put into editing. I'll often put in a decent amount of effort into the footage editing and trying to make it pleasant to watch. But like, if no one is looking at the screen, then maybe I can be more relaxed with the editing. I don't know. But let me know down in the comments, and no judgment either way for how you watch the videos. I'm just really curious. As you saw, I blocked in the base colors and now I'm adding more depth to the background elements with shading. I do plan to blur the background, so I don't need to go into major detail, but I do still like to add shading because if I don't, things can become really flat and blobby. Even when blurred, I want the shapes to read as more 3D-like forms. I really liked adding the different textures to the background, like the texture for the bush, the texture for the concrete, and for the water, I used a brush from the asset library. I used the brush that I used for the water in this illustration, and it also worked nicely for this one. Also, you will be able to watch the process for this illustration in an upcoming video. My next couple of videos are ones that I pre-made so that I can still post while I'm on vacation. So if things seem maybe a bit out of order, that's why. But in my one video, I do specify that it's pre-made, and for the other, it being pre-made shouldn't affect it too much. Oh, I almost forgot about the palm trees. I also really liked working on them. I kept them really simple and I didn't really feel the need to make them super realistic or hyper detailed, but I did like adding the texture to the edges of the leaves. For the next part of shading the character, we are going to kind of speed through it since we don't have a ton of time left. Plus, I want to speed through the character portion so I have time to focus more on showing the process for the ice cube and drink rendering. This element is kind of unique, so I wanted to be able to show it in more detail and talk about the process when we get to it. Compared to, in basically all my videos, I'm drawing characters and usually kind of explaining the process, so I feel like I don't need to focus on it as much. But since the character is sitting under an umbrella, I'm going to have her be casted in shadow and she'll be backlit. Having the character be more in shadow and having the background be more bright really helps give the picture a feeling of depth and also helps separate the foreground from the background. For the shading, I'm using my standard process of adding cell shading along with some soft gradients for where I want the shading to be softer or for more round forms. Throughout the shading, I try to include a lighter blue for bounce light. A lot of times for lighting situations like this where there is a bright light source but the subject is in shadow, we will get a blue bounce light from the atmosphere and also the light bouncing off of objects. Plus it just makes the shading look cool. But now it is time to render the cup. I'm actually doing a lot of the work for the cup by painting on top of my canvas with new layers. I made a mask for my folder that is the same shape as the cup so that I just draw in this area. I started by adding a bunch of white highlights to the cup to make it look shiny, but to also help it stand out. To make the texture feel more glass-like, I go in with darker colors where the glass is kind of thicker, like around the rim and edge of the cup. I also blended out the inner rim of the cup to help the form feel more like one cohesive piece instead of being separate. Next, I selected the juice area and add some shading and highlights to it. In my head, she's drinking strawberry lemonade. I picked this drink mostly because it's a fun color. For the top portion of the drink, I erased some of the highlights to give it a bit of a ripple texture. Next was the ice cubes, and I probably should have pulled up some references, but I kind of just opened my asset library and looked at the ice cubes from the brush. However, I kind of just end up doing my own thing. I kind of wanted to take artistic liberty with the ice cubes, like not try to draw them as they are, but more like how I want them to look. I wanted to make them clear, kind of colorful, and really shiny. I would make a cube shape, erase the different faces into the cube, and then go in with different colored highlights to make them more shiny and interesting. I would kind of try to texture the highlights to make the ice cube have a bit of a bumpy texture. And I had a ton of fun working on these. I do copy and paste some of the cubes, but I rotate them around and flip them and use them as more background ice cubes. So it's not super noticeable unless you like know and look for it. But all of you now know, so I am glad I put off working on the drink. I had been rendering the picture for a few hours on Sunday, and it was really close to being done, so I was going to try to push through and finish it. But I could tell I was starting to lose steam, and I really didn't want to get sloppy with the drink since it was kind of an important part to the piece. So I waited until Monday to work on it, and yeah, I'm really glad I did. By waiting to work on it, I had more patience and wasn't feeling as tired, so I could take my time and put in the amount of effort that I wanted to instead of rushing through it. I'm really glad I set this goal for myself at the start of the year of making a personal finished illustration each month. It's nice because it helps me feel like I'm creating art that features something I wanted to draw or work on, but it also helps me feel like I'm working on more art pieces that are original compared to just being like fan art or stuff for YouTube. So I'm really happy I set this goal, and it's probably one I'll do next year as well. I do wonder if I want to try to make something out of all these pieces. Some of you have suggested a calendar, and that could be really fun. Anyways, here's all the art I made in this video. It was great to do some digital sketching, drawing in my sketchbook, and making a finished picture. It's always fun drawing whatever the heck I want because I can kind of just jump around between different themes and mediums and just do whatever I feel like doing. I had so much fun working on all of these, and I hope you enjoyed watching the process for all of them. Before we end, I want to thank my super awesome YouTube members and Patreon patrons for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!